You've noticed them, the men who don't chase, who don't pursue, who don't orbitate around female attention like moths around flame. And you've wondered what makes them different. What psychological architecture allows them to exist in a world obsessed with validation without needing it, without chasing it, without prostituting their dignity for the possibility of approval? This isn't about game, this isn't about tactics or manipulation or playing hard to get. This is about something deeper, something structural, something that lives in the foundation of how these men perceive themselves and the world around them. Let's examine the uncomfortable truth. Most men chase because they're running from something. These men don't chase because they've already found it, not externally, internally. The difference isn't in their behavior, it's in their psychology, and that psychology creates a gravitational pull that changes everything about how attraction operates in their presence. Notice how the world tells you that pursuit is love, that effort is devotion, that if you're not chasing, you don't care enough. But the truth is more complex. The men who don't chase aren't indifferent, they're sovereign. And sovereignty creates a different kind of attraction entirely. You think not chasing means not caring. It doesn't. Let's examine what's actually happening in the psychology of a man who doesn't chase. He's not sitting back passively waiting for life to happen to him. He's not paralyzed by fear or crippled by insecurity. He's simply oriented differently. The truth is this: chasing is a symptom of scarcity. When you chase, you're operating from a belief system that says, this is rare, this might not come again, I need to secure this before it disappears. That belief creates desperation, and desperation repels the very thing it's trying to attract. Notice how this operates. A man who chases is communicating something beneath his words. He's saying, I don't believe I'm enough. I don't believe I'm worthy. You need to complete me. Now, here's what happens when a man doesn't chase. He's communicating the opposite, not through arrogance, through self-sufficiency. He's saying, I'm already whole, your presence would be additive, not essential. The man who doesn't chase has internalized a fundamental truth that most men spend their entire lives avoiding. His value isn't determined by whether someone chooses him. Let's examine why this is so rare. From the moment boys become aware of girls, they're taught to compete for female attention, to perform, to prove, to earn the right to be chosen. This conditioning runs deep. It becomes the operating system through which they view relationships. But some men reject that programming, not through rebellion, through clarity. They see the game being played and they refuse to play it. Not because they're above it, because they understand that playing it means losing yourself in the process. The truth nobody tells you: the moment you start chasing, you've already lost. Not the woman, yourself. Notice how chasing changes you. You start monitoring your words, calculating your responses, performing a version of yourself you think she'll find acceptable. You become a ghost of your actual self, a carefully curated persona designed to minimize rejection. The man who doesn't chase never enters that psychological prison. He remains himself, unedited, unapologetic, not because he doesn't care about connection, because he refuses to compromise his authenticity to obtain it. Now here's what's fascinating. This creates the very attraction that chasing destroys. You think women want to be chased? They don't. Not really. Let's examine the paradox. Women say they want effort, pursuit, romantic gestures, the man who fights for them. And on the surface, this appears true. But watch what actually creates sustained attraction. It's not the man who chases, it's the man who walks away. The truth is uncomfortable. Attraction isn't logical. It's not a reward system where more effort equals more desire. Attraction is a response to perceived value, and value is communicated through scarcity, not abundance.
When you chase, you're signaling abundance of your time, your attention, your availability. You're everywhere, always responding, always available, always trying. Notice how this affects her perception. If you're always there, always accessible, always pursuing, you must not have anything better to do. You must not have options. You must not be in demand. The man who doesn't chase communicates the opposite. His time is valuable because he values it. His attention is scarce because it's allocated to things that matter. His availability is limited because he has a life that doesn't revolve around her. Now here's what happens when you stop being available on demand. Her interest amplifies, not because she's playing games, because her psychology is responding to scarcity. Let's examine the deeper mechanism. Human beings want what they can't easily have. This isn't manipulation, it's evolutionary wiring. We assign value based on difficulty of acquisition. A diamond is valuable not because it's beautiful, plenty of things are beautiful. It's valuable because it's rare.
The man who chases is everywhere, common, easily accessible. The man who doesn't chase is rare, difficult to reach, valuable. The truth is this: you can't negotiate attraction through effort. You can't logic someone into desiring you. Attraction operates on a frequency that exists beneath conscious control, and that frequency responds to one thing above all else: the presence of someone who doesn't need you. Notice how paradoxical this is. The less you need her, the more she wants you. The more you need her, the less she wants you. This isn't cruelty, it's psychology. The man who doesn't chase has internalized this truth at a cellular level. He's not withholding attention as a strategy, he's genuinely living a life where female validation isn't the center of his existence. You think these men are emotionally unavailable? Most of them aren't. Let's examine the confusion. People see a man who doesn't chase and they assume he's cold, detached, incapable of connection, damaged by past relationships, or commitment-phobic, or narcissistic. Sometimes that's true, but often it's projection. The truth is more nuanced.
The man who doesn't chase isn't avoiding intimacy. He's avoiding the performance of intimacy. He's avoiding the transactional dance where affection is earned through pursuit and maintained through constant validation. Notice how society conflates pursuit with love. If you're not chasing, you're not interested. If you're not constantly proving yourself, you don't care. If you're not fighting for her, you're not committed. But the man who doesn't chase sees through this narrative. He understands that real connection doesn't require constant proof, that real attraction doesn't need to be negotiated, that real relationships are built on mutual choice, not one-sided pursuit. Now, here's what's actually happening in his psychology. He's not afraid of intimacy. He's afraid of losing himself in the pursuit of it. He's watched other men dissolve their boundaries, abandon their purpose, sacrifice their identity, all in the name of keeping someone interested. And he's decided that's too high a price to pay. Let's examine what this creates. When he does connect with someone, it's from a place of wholeness, not need. He's not using the relationship to fill a void. He's not outsourcing his emotional stability to another person's approval.
The man who chases is everywhere, common, easily accessible. The man who doesn't chase is rare, difficult to reach, valuable. The truth is this: you can't negotiate attraction through effort. You can't logic someone into desiring you. Attraction operates on a frequency that exists beneath conscious control, and that frequency responds to one thing above all else: the presence of someone who doesn't need you. Notice how paradoxical this is. The less you need her, the more she wants you. The more you need her, the less she wants you. This isn't cruelty, it's psychology. The man who doesn't chase has internalized this truth at a cellular level.
He's not withholding attention as a strategy. He's genuinely living a life where female validation isn't the center of his existence. You think these men are emotionally unavailable. Most of them aren't. Let's examine the confusion. People see a man who doesn't chase and they assume he's cold, detached, incapable of connection, damaged by past relationships, or commitment-phobic or narcissistic. Sometimes that's true, but often it's projection. The truth is more nuanced. The man who doesn't chase isn't avoiding intimacy. He's avoiding the performance of intimacy. He's avoiding the transactional dance where affection is earned through pursuit and maintained through constant validation. Notice how society conflates pursuit with love. If you're not chasing, you're not interested. If you're not constantly proving yourself, you don't care. If you're not fighting for her, you're not committed. But the man who doesn't chase sees through this narrative. He understands that real connection doesn't require constant proof, that real attraction doesn't need to be negotiated, that real relationships are built on mutual choice, not one-sided pursuit. Now, here's what's actually happening in his psychology. He's not afraid of intimacy. He's afraid of losing himself in the pursuit of it. He's watched other men dissolve their boundaries, abandon their purpose, sacrifice their identity, all in the name of keeping someone interested. And he's decided that's too high a price to pay. Let's examine what this creates. When he does connect with someone, it's from a place of wholeness, not need. He's not using the relationship to fill a void. He's not outsourcing his emotional stability to another person's approval.
The truth is this: the man who doesn't chase loves differently. Not less, differently. His love isn't desperate. It isn't clingy. It isn't suffocating. It's spacious. It allows breathing room. It trusts without surveillance. Notice how this affects the dynamic. When a woman is with a man who doesn't chase, she never feels smothered. She never feels owned. She never feels like a trophy he's desperately trying to keep on a shelf. She feels free. And in that freedom, she chooses to stay, not because she's trapped, because she wants to. You think not chasing is a strategy. For most of these men, it's not. Let's examine the difference between authentic non-pursuit and strategic non-pursuit. Some men learn not to chase as a tactic. They read about it, they practice it, they withhold attention deliberately to create attraction. That's not what we're talking about. The truth is this: the men who naturally don't chase aren't following a playbook. They're not calculating their responses to maximize attraction. They're simply living according to their values, and those values don't include chasing validation. Notice how you can feel the difference. Strategic non-pursuit has a quality of withholding, of performance, of manipulation. You can sense the agenda beneath it. Authentic non-pursuit has no agenda. It's simply a man being himself without apology. He's not trying to create attraction. He's not trying to make you chase him. He's just living his life. And if you want to be part of it, the door is open. Now, here's what makes this so powerful. Women can detect authenticity at a subconscious level. They can feel when a man is performing versus when he's simply being, and authentic non-pursuit creates a gravitational pull that strategic games never will. Let's examine why. When a man's behavior comes from genuine self-sufficiency rather than tactical manipulation, it's stable, it's consistent. It doesn't waver based on her responses. He doesn't suddenly start chasing when she pulls away, because he was never chasing to begin with. The truth nobody wants to hear: you can't fake this. You can't pretend to not need validation while secretly obsessing over whether she texted back.
You can't act self-sufficient while internally spiraling about whether she's losing interest.
The psychology has to be genuine, the self-sufficiency has to be real, and that requires deep internal work that most men aren't willing to do. Notice how this filters. When you authentically don't chase, you naturally attract women who are secure enough to appreciate it. The women who need constant pursuit, constant validation, constant proof, they self-select out. They move on to men who will give them that drug. And you're left with women who value autonomy, who respect boundaries, who are whole enough that they don't need someone to complete them. You think these men have it easy? They don't. Let's examine the cost. Not chasing means accepting that some women will leave. Some will interpret your lack of pursuit as disinterest. Some will need more validation than you're willing to provide, and they'll walk away. The truth is uncomfortable. The man who doesn't chase watches potential relationships dissolve because he won't compromise his boundaries. He watches women move on to men who will chase them, validate them, pursue them endlessly, and he lets them go. Notice how much strength this requires. Not the strength to chase, the strength to not chase, to watch someone walk away and not panic, not scramble, not suddenly transform into the pursuer he's not. Now, here's what most people don't understand. This isn't indifference, it's discernment. It's the ability to recognize that if someone needs you to be someone you're not in order to stay, they're not staying for you anyway. Let's examine the psychology of this. The man who doesn't chase has internalized that he'd rather be alone than be with someone under false pretenses. He'd rather have genuine connection or nothing at all than a relationship built on performance and pursuit. The truth is, this isn't afraid of being alone. He's afraid of being trapped in a relationship where he has to abandon himself to maintain her interest. Notice how radical this is in a culture that tells men their value is determined by their relationship status, that being single means failing, that not having a woman means not being desirable.
The man who doesn't chase has rejected that narrative entirely. He's reclaimed his sovereignty from external validation, and in doing so, he's become immune to the manipulation that controls most men. You think they don't feel loneliness? They do. Let's examine the reality. Choosing not to chase doesn't mean never wanting connection. These men experience loneliness. They experience desire. They experience the very human need for intimacy and partnership. But the difference is this. They don't let that loneliness drive their behavior. They don't let that desire compromise their boundaries. They don't let that need transform them into someone they're not. The truth is uncomfortable. Loneliness without chase is better than connection with self-abandonment. They've made that calculation. They've decided that preserving their integrity is worth the cost of occasional isolation. Notice how this is different from the men who chase. The chaser operates from scarcity. Every moment alone confirms his fear that he's not enough. Every rejection amplifies his desperation. His loneliness becomes a wound that drives increasingly desperate behavior. The non-chaser operates from abundance. Loneliness is a temporary state, not an identity. It's information about his human need for connection, not evidence of his inadequacy. Now here's what this creates. When he does connect, it's from a clean place. He's not using the relationship to escape his loneliness. He's inviting someone into an already full life, not asking them to fill an empty one. Let's examine why this matters. Relationships that are built to fill voids become toxic the moment the void stops being filled. You stop performing the role they need, and the relationship collapses. But relationships built between two whole people have resilience, have spaciousness, have room for both people to be fully themselves. The truth nobody tells you: your loneliness is not a problem to be solved by another person. It's a compass pointing you back to yourself, to the life you've neglected, to the purpose you've abandoned, to the identity you've compromised. The man who doesn't chase has followed that compass, and he's discovered that the loneliness wasn't about needing someone else. It was about having lost himself.
You think not chasing means not caring about relationships. It doesn't. Let's examine the paradox. These men often have the deepest, most genuine relationships, not in quantity, in quality, because they're selective, because they're not desperate to connect with anyone who shows interest, because they wait for women who match their values, their energy, their vision. The truth is this: not chasing doesn't mean not engaging. It means engaging differently. It means being present without being clingy, interested without being desperate, available without being uncool. Notice how this changes the entire dynamic. When you're not chasing, your attention becomes valuable. When you do invest time, energy, focus, it means something. It's not the default state, it's a conscious choice. Now here's what happens when your attention is valuable. She treats it differently. She doesn't take it for granted. She doesn't assume it will always be there regardless of how she behaves. She recognizes that your presence in her life is a choice you're making, not a need you're fulfilling. Let's examine the mechanism. Relationships based on chase operate on dependency. The chaser needs the validation. The chased needs the attention. It's a transactional exchange where both parties are using each other to fill internal voids. Relationships with men who don't chase operate on mutual choice. Neither person needs the other, both choose the other. And that changes everything. The truth nobody wants to admit: the healthiest relationships are between people who would be fine alone, but choose to be together. Not people who can't function without each other. The man who doesn't chase has already proven he's fine alone. He's built a life that's fulfilling, purposeful, meaningful, without requiring female validation to feel complete. So when he chooses connection, it's purely additive. Notice how rare this is. How many relationships exist because both people are terrified of being alone? How many connections are maintained through fear rather than genuine desire?
The non-chaser doesn't do fear-based relationships. He does choice-based ones. And choice-based relationships have a quality of freedom that fear-based ones never will. You think you could never be this way. You can. Let's examine what's required. Becoming a man who naturally doesn't chase isn't about learning tactics. It's about fundamental identity reconstruction. It's about examining every belief you hold about relationships, attraction, and your own value, and deciding which ones serve you and which ones enslave you. The truth is uncomfortable. You've been conditioned your entire life to chase, to prove yourself, to earn female approval. That conditioning lives in your nervous system, in your automatic responses, in the way you feel when a woman doesn't text back. Undoing that conditioning requires intentional deprogramming. Notice where your sense of worth comes from. Is it internal or external? Is it based on your values and actions, or on whether women choose you? Be honest. Most men discover their entire identity is wrapped up in female validation. Now, here's what has to happen. You have to build a life that's meaningful without women in it, not because you don't want women, because you refuse to need them for your life to have meaning.
Let's examine the process. You have to develop purpose, real purpose, work that matters, missions that drive you, goals that excite you more than the possibility of female attention. You have to create a life so fulfilling that female validation becomes a nice bonus rather than the central organizing principle of your existence. The truth is this: the man who doesn't chase has done the internal work. He's confronted his neediness, his desperation, his fear of abandonment, and he's healed those wounds through self-work, not through relationships.
Notice how most men try to use relationships as bandages for internal wounds. They're bleeding inside, feeling inadequate, feeling unworthy, and they think if just the right woman chooses them, it will heal them. It won't. It never does. The wound just attaches itself to the relationship, and the relationship becomes responsible for keeping the wound from bleeding. The man who doesn't chase healed his wounds first. He didn't wait for someone else to validate his worth. He validated it himself through action, through integrity, through living according to his values, even when it's difficult. You think this is about women. It's not. Let's examine the deeper truth. The psychology of not chasing is about sovereignty, about reclaiming your power from external validation, about refusing to let anyone, woman, job, society, determine your worth for you. The truth is this: when you stop chasing women, you stop chasing everything else too. You stop chasing approval at work. You stop chasing validation from friends. You stop chasing status symbols that are supposed to prove your worth to strangers.
You simply exist, fully, unapologetically, according to your own internal compass. Notice how liberating this is, how much energy you've been spending on impression management, on trying to be chosen, on performing versions of yourself you think others will find acceptable. Now, here's what happens when you stop. That energy redirects into purpose, into growth, into actual self-development rather than the performance of self-development designed to attract female attention.
Let's examine what this creates. You become genuinely interesting, not because you're trying to be, because you're living authentically. You develop skills because they interest you, not because they'll impress women. You pursue goals because they matter to you, not because they'll elevate your status in the mating market. And paradoxically, this makes you more attractive than any amount of chasing ever could. The truth nobody wants to hear: women are attracted to men who have lives that are already full, who don't need them, who would be living exactly the same way whether they were in a relationship or not. That's not indifference, that's sovereignty, and sovereignty is magnetic. Notice how this inverts the entire paradigm. Instead of chasing women to feel complete, you complete yourself, and women are drawn to that completion. Instead of using relationships to fill voids, you fill your own voids, and relationships become enhancement rather than necessity.
The man who doesn't chase understands this at a fundamental level. He's not withholding pursuit as a manipulation. He genuinely has better things to do. His life is too full, too purposeful, too meaningful to spend it chasing validation from someone who hasn't decided he's worth choosing. You're starting to understand now. Let's examine what you've learned. The psychology of men who naturally don't chase isn't about tactics or strategies or playing games. It's about fundamental identity, about who they are at their core, about values that won't bend even when loneliness whispers that they should. The truth is this: you can't become this man overnight. You can't read this and suddenly transform, because transformation isn't intellectual, it's experiential. It requires doing the uncomfortable work of building genuine self-sufficiency rather than the performance of it. Notice what this means practically. You have to develop a life that fulfills you without female validation. You have to build purpose that drives you independent of relationship status. You have to heal the wounds that make you desperate for external approval. And that work takes time, takes consistency, takes courage. Now, here's what happens when you do that work. Chasing stops being something you resist. It stops being a temptation.
It simply stops occurring to you as an option because your psychology has fundamentally shifted. Let's examine the end game. The man who doesn't chase isn't trying to attract women through non-pursuit. He's living according to his values, and if that happens to create attraction, fine. If it doesn't, also fine. His worth isn't contingent on the outcome. The truth nobody tells you: when you stop needing specific outcomes, you paradoxically create the outcomes you wanted. When you stop needing her to choose you, she often does. When you stop chasing validation, validation seeks you out. But here's the critical part: by the time that happens, you don't need it anymore. You've already found what you were looking for, not in her, in yourself.
You start this journey wanting to attract women. You end it realizing that was never the real goal. The real goal was reclaiming your sovereignty, becoming whole, living authentically. The women, they're just a natural byproduct of a man who has his life together. Awareness is your shield. You see now what chasing actually is: a symptom of internal incompleteness, a desperate attempt to source externally what can only be found internally. Consciousness is freedom. You understand now that you have a choice: continue chasing, continue needing, continue outsourcing your worth, or stop, build yourself, become whole, and let connection happen from that wholeness rather than that emptiness.
The man who doesn't chase isn't special. He's simply chosen differently. He's done the work that most men avoid. He's confronted the neediness that most men medicate through relationships. And he's discovered something revolutionary. He never needed anyone to complete him. He was always whole. He just had to remember. Now you know. What you do with that knowledge is where your power lives. You can keep chasing, keep performing, keep abandoning yourself for the possibility of being chosen. Or you can stop, build yourself, become sovereign, and discover that the approval you were chasing was always yours to give yourself. The choice was always yours. You just didn't know you could choose. Now you do.